right, I just want to introduce our guest and say a few words about her to begin with. Dr. Zhu was awarded her doctorate in urban and regional planning from the University of Florida. Her research focused on environmental science and sustainability. She has a Green Associate credential from Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. This is an achievement that signals a high level of knowledge about how to use urban efficiency and sustainability to mitigate climate change. Dr. Zhu worked as a planner in Marion County first, before she came to us, where she advocated for policies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. More recently, she's worked as a planner in our own Gainesville Department of Sustainable Development. In February, she began her new job serving as Gainesville's first Chief Climate Change Officer. Would you all please join me in welcoming Dr. Dan Zhu?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. And I'm going to talk about the Gainesville's adoption of the net zero goal. Is it on?
You don't need it. That
okay.
Lapel mic does the Zoom.
Okay, sounds good.
You're good.
So I'm going to talk about the information about the adoption of the net zero goal for City of Gainesville and the actions we've been taking since then. On this slide, I want to give you a brief overview what we can expect today. First, we will talk about the definitions for the net zero. Then we will talk about the main actions. And after that, we will discuss the challenges and we will wrap up with discussions. So before we start, I would like to ask a few questions. Please raise your hand if you are aware of climate change and its impact. That's great. The second question, please raise your hand if you have heard about Gainesville Net Zero 2045. Awesome. Last question. Please raise your hand if you have been recycling or trying to recycle regularly. Great. It's remarkable to see that everybody in this room had raised up their hand at least once, symbolizing a strong connection we all have with the topic I'm going to present. So first, we'll start with the definitions of net zero. What does net zero mean? So it refers to the balance between the greenhouse gas produced and removed from the atmosphere. So this diagram explains some examples. So the total greenhouse gas emission can be from the transportation, human activity, or waste. It can be removed to reduce the emission to get as close to zero as possible and reabsorbing any remaining through natural or technological means. So this is the net zero. And let's take a look at the timeline, which is the major actions that we have been taking. So the first one I will talk about is the net zero adoption. In 2018, City of Gainesville adopted net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2045. A year later, City of Gainesville adopted the Zero Waste Ordinance and also committed to zero waste by 2040. A year later, City adopted the Rental Housing Ordinance, which helps to improve the housing energy efficiency. On the same year, Alachua County and the City of Gainesville established the Joint Water and Climate Policy Group. Probably gonna check on this. Yeah. Okay. In 2021, city pledged Race to Zero under the United Nations. In 2022, City of Gainesville was recognized as a B City USA, which symbolizing the biodiversity that we have in this city. Earlier this year, Electric Vehicle Policy Steering Committee and the Integrated Resource Plan Stakeholder Group was established as well. I saw some familiar faces, so some of you guys actually were involved in this process. So thank you very much for your time and contribution. So next, we're gonna discuss about the path to the climate action plan. There are 5 steps. The first step is to understand where are we now. The step 2 is to design where are we going. This would be based on the greenhouse gas emission inventory in a way that we need to collect the data, understand which area has the biggest contribution to carbon. Step 3 would be to analyze the strategic planning. Where do we want to be? In other words, we need to know which area has the biggest reduction of carbon. And then step 4 would be to develop the climate action plan to understand how can we get there. In order to get the climate action plan, we need to have the greenhouse gas emission inventory from step 1 and 2, and also from the vulnerability assessment. I know some of you guys were at the Friday climate fair countywide presented a vulnerability assessment. That will be a great help to our climate action plan. Step 5, which is also very, very critical, which is to analyze, are we there yet? How can we improve? Because we can have beautiful plan in place, sitting on the table getting dust if we don't implement them. So implementation is the key for the climate action plan. Moving along, we're going to talk about the challenges. What are the challenges we're facing? So here are the challenges we are currently facing. First and foremost is the stakeholder collaborations, because different stakeholders have different priorities and interests. So we have general government, GRU, business owners, community organizations, and our citizens. We all have our different goals. Therefore, this is challenging. Secondly is the data and the information gap. We all know that an accurate and up-to-date greenhouse gas emission inventory is important. But the most recent greenhouse gas inventory for the city of Gainesville was conducted in 2019. Lastly is the awareness and engagement. We need to increase and improve the public engagement in a way that we can hear the voice from every corner of the community. Understanding the needs of our community is important, because that's the only way that we can create a plan that truly addresses those needs. So with that, I will jump to the discussions. I will ask 2 questions first, then we will open up for questions and comments. The first questions I have here is, what kind of environmental issues have impacted you or someone you know in the city of Gainesville? Just want to give you some examples. So oftentimes I would heard the food desert, transportation safety, and extreme heat. So who wanted to give it a try first?
Oh, hey there. I would say I've had relatives that live in rental properties in the city of Gainesville, and there's no organized curbside recycling for a lot of those rental condos, apartments, places. So that's a big challenge for people that are trying to do the right thing and recycle. Thank you.
We've noticed a lot of decrease in the number of butterflies, bees, things like that around, you know, just generally flowers. I think, you know, we used to have a lot more of those insects.
I'll second that.
Can I throw out another? I think this is related, it's an environmental issue, invasive species of plants and trees that are pushing out our native plants.
Right.
And as climate change, more things are able to grow that previously weren't able to grow. Species and plants. Thank you.
Grab some water real quick. Go ahead, please.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think the increase is.
Oh, wait, hang on just a second, I get you the mic back up. I'll go over it and I'll come right back.
I've noticed quite a lot of trees being cut in the city, much less tree coverage than we used to have.
So I just want to jump in really quick regarding the tree. So I know a lot of you folks had a concern regarding the tree and the heritage oak by the Henry's restaurant in downtown. So actually that tree will be saved. That's a good news. So thank you very much for all the effort you guys were doing. I was literally with the city commission for the joint water and climate group meeting on that day. One of the citizens texted the commissioner and asking him for another chance for the tree. So thank you for whoever did that. We appreciate your effort.
Yes, ma'am. Another concern is an increase in particulate matter that seems to be in the air in Gainesville and whatever, that seems to be escaping whatever filter systems we have available and whatever.
We live on Lake Noonan. The water quality has really declined in the streams, the springs, the lakes. And there doesn't seem to be any attention being given to it. It's sort of like, you know, it's the algae problems are going to be there rather than caring for the lakes and the waterways.
Oh, sorry.
I think we also need to mention these skyrise type apartments and all this stuff that's going up. And I mean, it really cuts off the sun in a lot of respects. But it also has led to massive tree destruction and so forth. And I just, you know, I walk by it every day and it's huge. I don't know who's going to live there. You know?
Yeah, I second that.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to address our personal habits when we just take things for granted many times. That I went to Publix the other day and I carried my own bags in, and the young man that was packaging was so enthusiastic that I had my bags. And I said, "Oh, I love your enthusiasm to encourage people to be more conscious and aware. And when are we going to be the first city in Florida to just ban plastic, to give ourselves good habits in all ways, in all consciousness?"
Speak up. That's just what it's in.
Good. I'm new to Gainesville, about a year and a half, and I'm living in maybe you guys know where Eagle Trace is. Some of you may. And I don't know, I'm repeating what somebody said earlier, but I am just horrified by the waste procedure. There's all these big, humongous trash, humongous trash, collectors, all along the road, and there's only like one little recycling area there at the end. Is there not a law or where does all this trash go? And this trash, including plastic, where does it go? And why aren't there recycling laws. I know that my daughter's here and she pays for recycling, but I'm very surprised.
In direct comment on that last comment, I want to say that I attended after the climate conference this weekend. I went to a meeting the next morning with the Sierra Club. We had the state director of the Sierra Club who led the meeting, and I heard a lot from our East Side residents about the battle that they've engaged in since at least 2018 regarding the landfill in southeast Gainesville. And it's a big problem for them. And it's been an uphill battle. They're still fighting it.
Another thing with regard to the plastic is that almost everything you buy at Publix anyway now is in these plastic clamshells, which supposedly aren't recyclable. So
Shop at the farmer's market. Yay.
I just like to second, third, or however many this comment about lack of recycling facilities. I do a lot of walking and I try to pick up trash, but I'm telling you, I get sick of carrying old beer cans around on account of there is no place to put them. There just isn't any public, but the campus is really nice. Campus has a lot of trash receptacles and recycling receptacles, but not the rest.
We're looking to see if there are any questions or comments on the, not so far on the chat.
Okay, then we can move to the next question I have.
There was one more.
Oh, one more, okay.
One of the, let's see here. An environmental issue that impacted me, I think, is something about the utilities went up and therefore my rent went up. So I think that something about maybe cleaning the water or something, but I think that's environmental. So that ultimately affected me monetarily.
So regarding the waste, last Friday, actually, there are two ordinances just take into effect. One is the solid waste division, and the other one is the solid waste collection. So those are gonna have prioritize the people in need. I have a slide in the very end. So here is the hierarchy and also is the priorities. We're gonna prioritize feeding hungry people. Secondary is feeding animals. And thirdly is providing for industrial use. And lastly would be composting. So this was just take into effect last Friday.
Could you describe what feeding animals mean?
So feeding animals. So they need to put those food separately, especially for the supermarket or grocery store larger than 25,000 square footage. If they have any food that about to expire or expire like a day or two, but actually doesn't impact the quality of the food, in that way they can prioritize to giving the hungry people. And we have some organizations and food collectors are in partnership in this initiative. And then if that does not consider acceptable quality of food, then we would consider giving to the animals.
Livestock or wild animals?
I believe it's wild stuff, but I can verify that. Yeah.
I just like this part. Hang on. You just wait for the mic. Sorry.
Yesterday, I went to Carson's Animal Refuge and they get food for animals that isn't acceptable for humans. When a container is damaged, things of that sort. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, correct. And for the food, the waste collections, so they need to put the food waste on a separate container, and then if it's a size larger than 1 cubic feet, and then they need to have a contract with a food collector, or they need to meet the state food collection permit requirement in a way that those food will not be like a dump in the trash.
I was just gonna say, there's also been collecting with these big yellow containers in some neighborhoods. That's what, and they already are collecting to put in the compost, and regenerative agriculture is here in Gainesville, working foods and grow hub. Anyways, sorry.
So
Yeah, I'm sorry. Folks, if you could just practice a little patience. We promise we will get the microphone to you, but we'll lose our online audience if they can't hear what you're saying. So it's important, okay? One thing I did want to ask was, in Feeding the Hungry People, you said you had partners. A, is Publix part of those partners? And B, is everybody, like Winn-Dixie, are all the stores signed on for that?
So in regards to that, we have a coordinator handling that. I can connect you with that coordinator, so he will be able to provide you the list. And I want to address a little something really quick is regarding the USDA People's Living Garden Initiative. That is something we are trying to push for in collaboration with USDA. That is want to recognize the community gardens, especially for those practice sustainable initiatives and provide green jobs for people. So I think that would be a good platform for the people in need as well, and also for the public engagement. And then just something regarding the challenge that I mentioned earlier, the data. In order to mitigate the data gap, we know budget is a concern. Like our city manager voluntarily reduced 5% of her own salary, and multiple departments are facing the budget cuts. For example, parks are gonna cut about 3 million. So those are all in discussion, and then we'll have a vote in September. So you guys all see that on the news, and budget is a major concern for the city of Gainesville, but we will not stop what we are doing because of the budget. And we have formed a greenhouse gas emission data collection group internally between different departments, especially for those who has a major contribution to the carbon emission. And in addition to that, we have the support from multiple community groups that we have done a lot of community outreach because of the support of people like you. So we will not stop our work because of the budget. And another question I've been asked a lot is what we're gonna do if we want to moving forward in regards to like electric vehicles. Probably you guys noticed that we have a lot increase in electric vehicles. So back to 2018, we only have about 600 electric vehicles in the area of city of Gainesville. And then the projection to 2030, that number will increase more than 10%. So well, at least 6,000 electric vehicles or even more. So that is the data according to the Department of Energy. But according to GRU, so every quarterly, they are expecting to see 300 electric vehicle increase. So I would say 6,000 is a very humble number regarding to that expect. And in order to accommodate the fast increase electric vehicles, we currently working on applying for the Department of Transportation electric vehicle charging infrastructure grant. So that grant, it will be due on June 13th, coming up really soon. And one thing worth mentioning from the grant that we will prioritize the Justice 40 area, which is the underserved community and in the East Gainesville. And one reason for doing that is we wanted to provide the opportunities for the people who will be purchasing or having electric vehicles in the future. And also we prioritize the major corridor area, which is the alternative fuel corridor, for instance, like 441. So we are considering having some charging infrastructures within 1 mile distance of the intersections in a way that for the people who needs to move faster due to some disasters or anything unexpectedly, then they will have those access. So that is some initiative we are trying to do.
Are there any short-term or long-term plans to actually change the mode of generating the power that is used to recharge electric vehicles? In other words, when are we going to switch from gas and coal or fossil fuel to generating our electricity in Gainesville? Is there any short-term or long-term vision for how to do that?
So that is a discussion for the Integrated Resource Committee that we just recently had one discussion, and we will have another meeting next week. I believe some you guys are involved, including like a Publix, people from UF, and the League of Women Voter and the Sierra Club. So multiple organizations are involved in that discussion. So right now we don't know yet until like maybe 4 or 5 meetings later. And GRU also hire a consultant in support of this concern. Yeah.
Has there been any consideration in requiring on these apartment buildings and in large roofed structures that we have an area to make sure they put solar cells on top of these massive roofs to generate power that way?
As far as I know, I have not heard anything like that.
Why not?
That's a good point. That will be in our current discussion. I can definitely bring that up to our next meeting with the Integrated Resource Plan group.
Are we considering, or I'm hoping you're considering changing the land development code and construction practices for particularly land clearing on large parcel developments? That's going to remove, in many cases, our old way of doing things removes much of the carbon sequestration potential we have with the canopy. So if the land development code doesn't change, we're probably running behind we're behind the 8 ball. Unless we can do something for it. Is that being considered?
Yes, so there is a discussion in regards to change the land development code, but we are still on the early stage. The things has been brought up was the mandate certain percentage for the parking lot to accommodate EV charging. So that's on that level. We have not get into, but we will definitely keep an eye on that when we get to the point.
You mentioned the integrated resource plan. That's critical. GRU is developing their plan for the next at least 5 years and beyond. And they have some real problems reducing the use of fossil fuels. They of course say, well, gas is a whole lot better than coal. We want to get rid of the coal plant entirely, and they will. It'll be retired soon. But the use of gas has no limit right now. And that's a big problem for GRU and for everybody else. GRU says that solar has so many difficulties with regard to land use, especially here in Gainesville. But now we face this bill 1645, House Bill 1645, which is imposing great limitations on the city. And one of them is that GRU will be controlled by a small board that will only allow them to talk about the fiscal aspects of GRU management and directing the day-to-day operations. And that's it. They cannot talk about social or environmental issues. So this bill is a big impediment.
Yeah, so frankly speaking, that is a concern for us as well. So with the new change, which has not been effective yet, but that's something gonna be happening on October. So what's gonna happen, we don't know. So there are a lot of unexpected. So even with that change, right now they are committed to the net zero 2045. But with the change, with the new board, is that still gonna be the case? And what that means to us? So we don't know that.
We have a chat question or statement that clear cutting of new developments is a huge issue. So I don't know if there's anything that can be done or any kind of regulations, but they're just wiping them out.
And so right now we have not have any regulations on that yet. But I do want to address to the solar. I do notice by the VA hospital, they've newly installed a couple solar EV charging infrastructure. Did you guys notice that by the 16th Avenue? So that solar is just provide alternative for the traditional power grid, but that's a good starting point. And we hope to see more solar powered electric charging infrastructure, or like provide power for the building as well.
Yeah, it's following on that same statement. Why is urban development being encouraged in Gainesville? Who wants Gainesville to grow so much and make so much? Whose vision and plan and control is this?
So I want to say that is from the market demand, and it's not from us, because in each individual parcel has a different owner, that as a city, we don't have the authority to say, oh, I want this to be a multifamily. We can only regulate the zoning and land use. So zoning and land use can be listed the permitted use in that category. But in terms of how fast those projects coming in, how fast our developers gonna invest here, we don't have control over that.
Well, however, last year there was an event at Bo Diddley Plaza where I found out that marketers from New York City had been hired to try to pull people into Gainesville from other places of the country. So it's being deliberately, the growth is being deliberately planned. It's not just people selling land because they feel like selling it. Someone in the, I don't know, in the government or someplace wants Gainesville to get big. And so the question is why?
Frankly speaking, I have not heard about that. And I can check with our city manager's office and to have a further discussion if I find anything.
There was a big event on Bo Diddley Plaza. It was a big public event.
Was it about the easy affordable housing?
No,
project?
it was about bringing people into Gainesville from other parts of the country and wanting to know what would make people in Gainesville happy so that it could get bigger.
Okay, I'll check on that. And can I have your leave your contact information afterwards?
Sure.
Right. And we still have one question from me. Actually. Right. So the last question is, are you taking any actions to reduce your carbon footprint in the city of Gainesville? So examples could be try to walk more and try to recycle and repurpose more. So anybody want to share your experience? Oh.
just wanted to add something that has been helpful. I am one of the guilty people, number one, that by the way, that uses plastic bags when I forget my cloth bags infrequently. It's less and less frequently, but one of the things that helped my consciousness was taking a trip through the transfer center. They do this as a regular tour the dump, basically. And many of us in here that I see have actually done this. And it doesn't just increase your, your awareness of the problem. It also is remarkable how much is being dealt with and what creative ways solid waste disposal is working. So I'm thinking I'm doing one thing, which is basically educating myself and public flagellation, I guess, for everyone who does use the plastic bags. I would love to see that. I believe that there is a group that is supporting that at this point. If there is, could you give us the group? Thank you.
So many years ago, for the people been living here longer than 10 years, you probably remember that there was a discussion about banning the plastic bags for the grocery store, but it wasn't successful. So right now we do not allow plastic straw from the restaurant or any food provider. And also the food provider shall not include the single-use utensils, plastic utensils, unless you ask for. So that is something currently we are doing is ineffective, but we are not like fining anybody who are not following this. So we are still like encouraging. If we find any restaurant are not following this, then we will talk to them. So that's the level of enforcement we are doing right now.
We installed solar and it's been very successful. But the item I wanted to mention is we have some friends who have livestock. And so my wife sets aside all the cuttings, all the vegetable cuttings. And every week, this morning, in fact, we give it to them for the animals. So if you're interested, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who would be happy to help. If anybody can do that, they want to share.
I appreciate your effort.
Yes, I've taken a lot of actions to reduce our carbon footprint. First of all, Connie's produced a native plant garden, which requires no water to speak of. And that's a great help with regard to water consumption. Our consumption is extremely low. But secondly, I've done everything to reduce our electric footprint. We have solar. I was able to invest in that for the house. I was able to invest in a hybrid water heater, which reduces by 70 or 80% the amount of energy required to heat your water. That allows me to shut off the gas entirely most of the year, except I still have methane powered furnace. That's the only thing that remains with natural gas. So I've done a lot, but to me, what's really important is enabling our lower income residents to be able to utilize these facilities. They talk about affording their energy bills. I already work with the Community Weatherization Coalition. That's very important. The CWC does wonderful work, but it only handles 100 to 200 people each year. So it does a very small volume. And that's critical, is helping people weatherize their homes. That's what's costs people most of the money. And they might be paying $300, $400, $500 bills, which is astounding to me. They don't have to, but it costs money. It costs investment. And if we could invest on a community level, rather than each individual having to put that money in if they have a low income, it would be wonderful.
Thank you. So we are currently trying to do a summarize in regards to the tax like incentives that we have from the federal, state, and local level. And like a CWC, we are in the discussion of putting that information together. And then we will, once it's available, we will put it on our city's website as well.
I saw Glenn's hand first and then Jim's and then Janet's. So I'll circulate around that way. So bear with me here.
Yes, we regularly compost both leftover foodstuffs and so on and whatever, as well as vegetative waste and whatever, grass clippings and so on, and regularly use the soil generated by that compost and whatever in the yard. We also go ahead and have a very heavily vegetated yard so that we take advantage of photosynthesis and draw the carbon out of the air so it can be converted to oxygen, obviously. We also, during the summertime, keep our thermostat between 78 and 80 degrees in the summertime. And in wintertime, between 65 and 68, which helps go ahead and cut down on the amount of fuel that we go ahead and use during the seasons. And it keeps our bill down somewhat as well.
Hi, do you know what this church has done as a group to address climate change? Well, one thing is we're educating ourselves. And a couple of weeks ago, we voted to become a creation justice church. So creation involves everything, including the atmosphere. And so we're going to be educating ourselves and working to reduce our church's climate footprint. And I think one way we could do that is basically what Glenn was referring to, is composting. It's something I do at home, but I don't think the church does it. Do we? And if not, we're going to start doing it, right, Bromley? So I'm looking for a compost czar that can help lead UCG's new compost initiative.
Thank you.
It's so easy. I've done it for 30 years.
Oh, we haven't started.
Well, coffee grounds are great for your plants.
I'm not sure if we're
The last
ending,
slide,
but
the QR
what I
code.
have to offer
Thank
is
you.
something probably nobody else does. And I'm thinking about something Mary said with the plastic bags. What we often do with our plastic bags is collect dirty kitty litter with the number 1 and number 2 in it, okay? And what we do with that is when we have critters that are around our house that we need to figure a way to get rid of them. They're digging holes into the property. You take the used kitty litter, the poopies, and you put them in their hole. And it does chase them away. They will move on. So that's one way we have to still get rid of the bag, and we don't shove the plastic bag in the hole, but we use the bags. And that's one way we do it, and it works. So it's the next is what do we do with the used dirty plastic bag? Great.
Really still plastic is still.
Sort of related question. If the city is cutting their budget and they're cutting some things that we're very concerned about, are they going to cut your job?
So as far as I know, and they will not cut my job because the climate action is a priority for the city manager as well for the mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you. So do we have any more comments? So we did create a climate action survey. So if you want to participate, whether you are online or here, you can take out your phone and turn on the camera and point to the QR code. Wait for it to pick up the link to access the survey. And if you have a climate action survey. So if you have any questions for me, or you have any questions that you would like to address, or you want to get more details about specific questions, feel free to email us. Our email is climateaction@gainesvillefl.gov. Oh, so it's climate action, CLIMATEACTION @Gainesville, GAINESVILLEFL.gov. And also, if you like to send me an email, I can also email you the link to access to the survey so that you can share with your friends and your families. So if you haven't participated, please participate, because we are eager to hear from you. And once again, thank you very much for being here. And we look forward to hearing from you throughout each step of the climate action plan and implementation. Thank you.
Thank you.